Well, good morning and Merry Christmas, everyone. Welcome to another California Board of Psychology update here. Today is kind of special. Obviously, it's Christmas. Uh, so I'm just going to spend some time sitting with you for a little bit today. For me, this represents a transitional point that I've carried a lot of trauma, your trauma for the past 15 years. And this is a release point for me. All the previous work about getting filings and legal stuff and anticipating and writing, all that's done. That's all done. Starting today in up till Monday, my only task is to prepare my opening statement, my closing statement, and my lines of cross examination. And a lot of that will be extemporaneous as I do it. Obviously, the examination will be semi extemporaneous based on the responses, but also to a degree, I'll structure up the two um, opening statement and closing statement. But again, I'll be acting extemporaneously for that. And it's an event, it's theater, it's presenting the evidence to the administrative law judge, and we'll see what happens. The One of the interesting things that I did just yesterday uh, is in the midst of all of this, I have a client who has an upcoming uh, court hearing. And I was notified that they're going to cross examine the forensic custody evaluator who did this evaluation. And so I did an AI workup for the custody evaluation. And the AI, that's great. I'm telling you, I love AI. I used Gemini, and within a day, I took the custody evaluation and the Vita and even the notes, although the notes weren't that useful, but the custody evaluation would have taken me 2 weeks before AI to do the analysis. It took me a day. So I just sat down with Gemini and we went through the custody evaluation and recognized what was happening. And I just want to show you what's coming because right now we're at Christmas time. We're in the dead of midwinter when the world is kind of dead. But there's the life that's still in the evergreens, and we bring them inside because there's still life even in the death. And so I wanted to show you what I did yesterday, Christmas Eve. This is my Christmas Eve, and it sort of all comes down to this. There's much more surrounding it, but I want to show you this. This is from Gemini, and we do a path A, path B analysis. Path A is that the targeted parent is abusing the child in some way, creating the child's attachment problems towards that parent. And path B is that it's the allied parent who's psychologically abusing the child. These are the narcissistic pattern, narcissistic dad pattern, or the borderline mom pattern, delusional thought disorders, and the psychological control. And the wonderful thing about AI is it can keep track of the probabilities of those. It's looking at the symptoms, the patterns, and predicting what the probability of path A, path B is using Bayesian statistics. And so it's kind of small, but I want to point this out to you. So it says Bayesian path. This is right from, I pulled it right off the chat. So Bayesian path analysis probability estimates. This is what we wound up with. So the diagnostic path, path A, path B, clinical description, abusive range, paternal maltreatment. In this case, the targeted parent was the dad. And then pathogenic maternal influence. The allied parent was the mom. Current probability, and then the supporting evidence. And I redacted the supporting evidence because it's kind of personal to the family. But you can imagine each time it's going to be what is the evidence for that probability estimate. And look at that. we wound up with path A, that the father was causing the problems, at about 10%. There's a 10% chance that dad is the problem. And the mom, we're at 90%. So we're pretty much 90% sure that mom is causing all of this. And it's only like a 10% chance that it's dad. It's very low probability. Now, I could never generate that. Okay, I'm a human. I don't do Bayesian statistics and language and stuff. AI can, and it does it super easily. Um, and wouldn't you know, the custody evaluator had it exactly flipped. Their custody reporter or evaluator said that the child should stay with mom and that dad's a problem. 100% flipped from what is actually the case. Now, the rest of the chat dialogue, the prompt response log, the rest of that describes all the why. So we went through and looked at we looked at this, we looked at that, we looked at the symptom features and everything going on, and it's under the supervision of a psychologist, and we talk about it. That's why I call it a dialogue, because it's not just a chat, it's a back and forth between me and the AI. The AI bringing this kind of stuff, and me bringing the clinical eyes to the situation. So while the world may be tough for you right now, the world is also changing. And the toughness of the world, let me talk about that for a second. Because I've sat with you for 15 years. When I got over here, I had duty to protect, clinical duty to protect. You're being abused, your children are being abused, and nobody's stopping it. And then I realized why is because of all the unethical incompetence over here. And nobody cares. Why are there nobody? Because they're doing an experiment on you, an experiment on human subjects, you and your children, without review. And they experimented with these custody evaluations like we just did that are absolutely awful and destroy the lives of children and their parents. They're dangerous, harmful to children, lack scientific and legal value, and result in potentially disastrous consequences. New York Blue Ribbon Commission. So we need to stop those. We need to get you, the parents, back into standard clinical practice. Now, when I began 15 years ago, I recognized the institutional capture. Okay, the forensic custody evaluators owned you. They had the AFCC as their platform. They had infiltrated the APA. They had infiltrated the licensing boards and had disabled all the oversight regarding what they were doing. And I'm just a single lone psychologist. Oh my goodness. So that's where I started my process of protecting you, protecting your children. And what that entailed was entering the family court system. I don't want to be here. You look at my Vita, I'm everywhere but here. I'm early childhood. I'm, trauma and, ADHD and kind of stuff. I'm not in the family courts. No clinical psychologist wants to be in the family courts. It's too dangerous. But I stayed because if I leave, you got nobody. And I'm top tier expert. And so this is kind of my pathology. I'm clinical director, senior staff. So if not me, who? So I stayed with you. And I started to build my standing in the family courts so that I could have influence. I have reached the point where my standing is peer. I'm an expert, second opinion on custody evaluations. You see that, and everything. And now I am putting my license and everything on the line, and so I'm sacrificing myself, perhaps, because that sacrifice will then break open the capture. A classic feature of abuse pathology is to isolate its victim from reporting and rescue. You think of a sexually abused little child that is groomed and isolated, or the spousal abuse victim where he isolates her from friends and contact. And so it's a classic feature of abuse is to ice. And that's what's happened to you. Okay, you've been isolated. because of this forensic custody evaluation, this experiment that took you away from clinical psychology, diagnosis, and treatment, and they're doing something different to you. And that's a very bad thing, very bad thing. It's resulted in 40 years of undiagnosed and untreated child abuse, with Claude estimating it's in the hundreds of thousands. And I'm challenging that. I'm going, is it really that high? I'm going, yeah, I guess it is. Over the 40 years, it's hundreds of thousands of children and their parents and who have not been diagnosed or treated for the child abuse and spousal abuse that's occurred, leaving us with immense numbers of parents and children, now adult children, and their grieving parents. Um, that's called institutional betrayal trauma. The institutions that should have protected you didn't. You did nothing wrong. You parents did nothing wrong. Your children did nothing wrong. And even the pathological parent, they're just pathological. They're trauma, and so they couldn't help themselves for being traumatized and pathological. It was us. It was the mental health system that failed you. We should have protected you. We didn't, because we have these psychologists who are exploiting you for your money. Everybody's exploiting you for your money over here. Oh my goodness, the financial exploitation is phenomenal. And so I sat with you, and year after year, I would do these blog posts or things on Christmas and Mother's Day and Father's Day and things, just being with you. And that's, for me, as a psychologist, that's called vicarious trauma. Your grief, traumatic grief for the parents, is substantial. It's huge. I first learned about traumatic grief when I was working in Children's Hospital with the spina bifida. That was my medical rotation. That's the spinal cord birth defect that puts kids in wheelchairs and stuff. And their parents had gone to the hospital expecting a baby. Oh boy, we're going to have a child and stuff. And they first learned about the spina bifida and the disability in the delivery room when all of a sudden the doctors and nurses start moving really fast, and the mom goes, what's the problem? She's just given birth to a child and everybody's moving around. And it always chokes me up when I tell it, but there's the nurse will come over to the mom, and yeah, there it goes. And one of the nurse will kind of stay with the mom and say, hey, we got something going on, and it's going to be okay. But and meanwhile, the doctors are working with the birth defect and the spina bifida, trying to get that aligned and stuff. And the parents who thought they were going to have a child, but they didn't expect it was going to be this medicalized child, where you have the wheelchairs and hydrocephalus and all these other complications for their child. And so that's where I learned about traumatic grief. It's a grief that can never heal because they're grieving the child they expected to have, but they don't have that child. So there's grief, but they do have a child. So it's traumatic grief. It's grief that can never heal. And that's what you parents have, is a traumatic grief. And it's particularly hard on these sentinel events, these like Christmas or Mother's Day or things. And Christmas is particularly hard when everybody getting together for family and exchanging presents and love and all this kind of stuff, and you're not. You have children, but not you don't. Where are your children? Somebody killed them. Somebody killed them because they were angry with you, and in revenge they killed your children, your pathological ex. That is phenomenal. And the level of your grief, when I put it next to the kids with birth defects and you in the family courts, you're off the charts. Okay, theirs is normal range trauma, okay, and grief. Yours is phenomenal, and so I understand that. And you know me from family systems. I'm always talking family systems, triangulation, and and cross-generational coalitions and stuff. And that comes from my training at Pepperdine. We could pick two specialty tracks. I picked family systems because I wanted to work with children. And my other specialty track, we had psychoanalytic, cognitive behavioral, or humanistic existential. I took humanistic existential. I'm a humanistically trained psychologist. That means empathy, Carl Rogers, Maslow's growth and self actualization and stuff. And that means that I'm as good at humanistic existential as I am in family systems. Okay. I'm really good at both of those. But you don't necessarily see the humanistic existential part. You feel it, but you don't see it. You see more of the family systems. But what that entails is I am the instrument of my work. So I take the person's experience and I bring it within me. Because then when I have it within me, I can see its lines and shapes and stuff. If it's in you, then it's in you, and I can't quite see what's going on. But if I bring it into me, it's called empathy. I bring it into me, I can then see its features, and then I know what to do about it to fix it and resolve it. But that means I have to hold your experience. And Winnicott calls that the holding environment, where we hold the experience of the other, or the child, is how he was talking about him. And that's where therapists, the healers, that's called vicarious trauma, where we absorb the trauma we're working with. And I've worked with a lot of trauma over my life. I've started with the Suicide Prevention Center, work with schizophrenia and the family traumas about that. You think you can have a normal kid going through 14, 15, 16, all of a sudden 18 years old, they have a psychotic break, and now you've lost your child to schizophrenia, and that's very traumatic. Then I went to Children's Hospital working with the spina bifida, then out to clinical director working with the wee ones, 0 to 5 in foster care, or abused children there. And now into the family courts, which is the most tragic trauma and child abuse and destruction of lives ever, anywhere. And so I've been in the family courts for 15 years. Hopefully, I was hoping the systems would correct somehow. So I'm going to the AFCC, telling them competence issues. I'm going to the APA, telling them ethics issues, petition to the APA. I kind of knew they weren't going to change because that's institutional capture. They've been captured by the forensic custody evaluators. And within that, then we have the exploitation by the PAS experts who are saying, oh, we've discovered something new. No, it's not. It's in the DSM-5. The moment you diagnose it, you get child abuse and we get a protection on it. So stop calling it PAS and call it, delusional thought disorder. Nope, we're not going to do that because we're discovering something and we're experts in it. Like 15 years I've dealt with that, tried to do that. But it's all reached ahead. It's all come down to now. It's all come down to this. I cannot, and this is part of my resolution for me, I cannot go on with another year of this, of no solution when the solution is immediately available. And I'm meeting with parents every month and saying, well, you can get the court orders for it, but you're still going to need treatment. And you don't have any mental health people who are competent to give you treatment. So I don't know what you're really going to do. Maybe recruit from the DBT therapist or something, or maybe reform, educate your forensic. That's not a solution. What should be happening, it's not a complicated pathology, narcissistic borderline parents, you got two patterns, and it's a delusional thought disorder. They're collapsing and they're going to create a shared delusional disorder. Not complicated. It's easy to diagnose. Mental status exam of thought and perception, you can pop that delusion right out in the session. And that's how we diagnose delusions. We don't do it on history. We actually pop it out and take a look at it in the session. That's called a mental status exam of thought and perception. And so we could solve this immediately. And we could have solved it 10 years ago. We could have solved it 40 years ago. if it hadn't been for the forensic custody evaluators and the PAS experts coming together in a perfect storm of ignorance and incompetence that isolated you from the actual knowledge. Meanwhile, ADHD is advancing in its research and understanding. Autism is advancing, and every other field, attachment is every other field is grounded in science and is advancing, except the family courts where you're isolated and you're back in medieval times where they're talking about, oh, there's an imbalance of humors and, bleed the child because, we need to bring me the leeches kind of stuff. It's phenomenal. So I can't go on with that. No solution. So if it takes giving up my license and giving up my career and everything, look at me, old guy, I've only got a few years left. If that's what it takes, then that's what it's going to take. This needs to stop. This is child abuse. It's not parental alienation. It is child abuse. Every single time, if a child's rejecting a parent, every single time it's going to be path A or path B, child abuse, and we need to be returning a diagnosis of child abuse every single time. And that gives you a scope of how much we have missed regarding this pathology. So for Christmas here, I wanted to send out my Christmas greeting that a wise person once said, but whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to stumble into sin, it would be better for him if the millstone were hung around his neck and he was drowned in the depths of the sea. That, yeah, I kind of agree with that. And so if it offers any comfort in your grief and your hard times today, uh, there are eyes watching. There are eyes that know beyond us. And things are moving and things are changing. I have absolute faith in that. I know it for a fact. There's so many synchronous things that are just, everything is set. Okay. I'm walking a path that was set for me. Weird thing, and we can talk about this coming in the days and years ahead. Weird thing. Don't you find it a little coincidental that I have exactly the expertise that's necessary? High quality attachment, delusional thought disorders, those don't fit. You get delusions out of schizophrenia, you get attachment early childhood. How do I have both of those? Family systems, child abuse and complex trauma, and the Belmont report and IRBs around experimenting on human subjects. I mean, I'm perfectly set up, and I never planned any of this. Okay, and yet I've got the perfect stuff, and it's 1,000 things like that I understand, and so this is what I need to do. We'll see what the licensing board does. They have not, because they're continuing to prosecute me. They have not indicated they accept or receive my duty to protect you and your children. That's the regulatory capture. The regulatory system of the state licensing board are protecting the incompetent and unethical professionals and to the harm of their citizens, the children and the parents, and substantial harm, child abuse and spousal abuse, and they're protecting the incompetent and unethical psychologists. Fact. And so that's what this is demonstrating. The California Board of Psychology is seeking to sanction me over my criticisms of this fabricated pathology, parental alienation, that is responsible for hundreds of thousands of undiagnosed child abuse cases. Once this breaks, once they stop the forensic custody evaluations and realize, oh my gosh, look what's been going on over here, it's going to be a scandal unlike anything we've had yet. This on this scale, church Catholic Church sex abuse scandal, it's going to be small potatoes as to what happened in the family courts. And this is because it's a classic textbook case of regulatory capture and institutional betrayal trauma. It's going to be talked about and studied for 40 years here. So because the California board has not received or accept my duty to protect obligation, I still carry it. There's no place to discharge my duty to protect you guys. That's the reason I'm here. I've got a duty to protect you guys, and I can't get you any system. Any of the protective systems of psychology are not protecting you. They're not activating. American Psychological Association, the licensing boards, and forget the AFCC. They're just a platform for the promoting the experiment. And so we need to stop that. So what I'm doing is I will be discharging my duty to protect into the hearing, into this event. And once I do that, it's discharged. I'm done. No matter what happens to me, I'm done. But I'm going to sit and go over to AI. I can do an AI analysis for you folks, and it'll identify the ignorance and competence, and we'll just sit here doing that. And I don't need a license to do that. I can, it's the AI, and everybody will know what happened to Dr. Childers. He was sanctioned for criticizing the Gardner PAS people, because that's not allowed. You can't criticize the Gardner PAS people. It's a turf war, okay? And they're seeking to silence their critic, silence the one that exposes them. Let me say something about that too, because I've said this on numerous occasions, which is the pathology, the pathogen, the damaged set of information in the attachment networks has three defenses. Now, no other pathology has a defense, but this one does because it's in the motivational networks. Has three defenses. The first is it hides extraordinarily well. And once we break open this, that's one of the things psychologists are going to recognize about this feature. This pathogen hides extremely well. And that's why you can't go and get it, because it's hidden back. And the further you go in, you start chasing it down the rabbit hole. The second is it recruits allies to enable its ability to enact the abuse. And so that's what you see with the forensic custody evaluators, with the PAS experts or the allies of the pathology. They're covering it up through their false labels, fabricated labels, and the forensic custody evaluators are covering it up by not diagnosing anything. And so that they're allies to covering up the child abuse. Okay, so that's the second defense, seek allies. The third defense is, if anything tries to expose it from its hiding, it attacks with great viciousness. It attacks, seeking to put that threat of exposure on the defensive and thereby relieve the pressure on exposing it. And that's exactly what's happening here. So I'm going to expose the PAS experts as just non-existent and their whole little thing. And so what do? They attack. And so now I've got the licensing board and everything expecting me to be on the defensive. That's not how you deal with it. Okay, you have to absorb the first attack. It's going to get the advantage, the false allegation of abuse. You got CPS out investigating you, and they're investigating you for child abuse, not the pathological parent for their manipulation. And everybody gets off with all the allegations, false allegations, put the focus on you. And that gains early traction. Lies gain early traction because everybody thinks the lie is true, and they evaluate that. Over time, though, the lies have no staying power. And so while I may be injured on this first initial attack, over time, it's going to be clearly obvious what took place and what the truth is. And the truth will out. And so that's with you and your pathology. I'm kind of your role model. Is you have to prepare for the attack, that when it comes, you catch it and then flip it. And so my preparation for the attack I knew was coming was all 15 years of going to petition to the APA and going to the AFCC and all my blogs. And I'm documenting a trail that says I'm working under ethical standards 1.04 and 1.05 for doing something about unethical practice in my colleagues. And I'm documenting all that up. So eventually, when the pathogen attacks me, either the custody evaluators or the PAS experts, eventually when they attack, because I'm going to expose their nonsense, I can catch it. Hopefully I can catch it. Hopefully it won't damage me. But I'm not defending myself. No. I did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. I did everything right, even consulting with an ethics expert, Eric Strong. I did everything right. I did nothing wrong. You did nothing wrong. You parents, you did nothing wrong. It's not your fault. Children, you did nothing wrong. It's not your fault. It's bad people are doing bad things to you. And that's the situation. So I'm going to catch it, hopefully, and flip it, or I'll take the injury and then we'll just keep going. And everybody will know what's happened because I'm kind of your poster child for what's happened. Again, look at me, old guy. I'm out of here, and you guys can argue about it for the next 40 years. So, with that, I'm just sitting here with another Christmas for you. I'm going to head off to my day of starting the process of all I have to do now is develop the opening and closing statements, lines of questioning, and release a lot, 15 years of vicarious trauma. And so it's a personal thing for me at this point of just, that difficult situation. Now, when I arrived here, the first thing I recognized is this pathology is evil. And I'm not exaggerating on this. This pathology is evil. That is the nature of the pathology. So you have ADHD, autism, evil, right here in the family courts, evil, boom. And so what I do whenever I enter a new pathology realm, whether that's selective mutism or autism or whatever it is, I read everything there is about it. Okay, I go to the source material, I start reading about it and educate myself about what domain that is, what's the scientific. When I got over here, I recognized evil immediately. Okay, and the absence of empathy is a capacity for cruelty. So I started to get books on evil. One of the prime ones is Simon Baron-Cohen, The Science of Evil, on empathy and the origins of cruelty. So Simon Baron-Cohen, goes through the brain networks related to empathy and what happens. There's only three things that cause the absence of empathy: narcissistic personality pathology, sociopathic personality pathology, and autism. That's the only three things that have that symptom of the absence of empathy. And we're not talking about autism. So guess what we're talking about? Narcissistic and sociopathic. And so that's the science of evil that I started. This is sort of the core of the description. Then I got Baumeister. He's written a prominent book on evil. And so I got his description of evil and what's going on with that. He's kind of the classic person there. Then I turned to Aaron Beck. Aaron Beck is a huge psychiatrist person. He's responsible for the cognitive part of cognitive behavior therapy. And he's got Beck depression inventory, Beck suicidality scale, all sorts of things like that. And he's written his book, The Prisoners of Hate: The Cognitive Basis of Anger, Hostility, and Violence. Aaron Beck. Okay, The Prisoners of Hate. And then I got this one book. I love this book. the Lucifer principle. Okay, oops, there it is, the Lucifer principle. And he talks about a scientific expedition into the forces of history. And he talks about how it's the idea structures, meme structures that Dawkins talked about, little idea things that are predatory and capture our brain networks and capture our stuff, the Lucifer principle. And so those are the four primary texts that I rely on for this, for evil. And so this is a significant pathology here that we're dealing with in the family courts. And this is not normal. Everything is not normal here. The it's been an exhausting 15 years. Okay, holding you, being with you, and sitting with you in your grief. I know this is another difficult holiday for you. I know it's difficult not to be seen, not and just to be discarded into the world. But I want to assure you, you are seen, um, and things are changing. They will change. Unfortunately, this thematic archetype is one of witness. That's sort of the theme that we have going, witness. And it's a sacrament. Witness is a sacrament, but it's one that requires that we walk the path of suffering to allow the witness for the change. And that's the path we're on. Just speak the truth, and um, and there will be witness to that truth. And once that witness breaks through the lies, then we get the protection of our children and the protection of you from the evil the that is occurring. And if it's any comfort at all, there will be accounting. Okay, that anyone who hurts the children, it's better that they would have a millstone around their neck and thrown in the depths of the sea. That includes the forensic custody evaluators. That includes these self-proclaimed PAS experts. That includes your ex-spouse going forward who caused such suffering to you and your children. So I know it's not much on this Christmas, but recognize you're not alone. You're seen, and things are moving, uh, even if even if you have to endure another Christmas like this. And you folks, the ones I'm talking to now, are the you've only been here a couple of years, maybe. I've been here 15, so I've seen you cycle through. So I know all the parents and all the now adult children who are confused and still lost. And we'll get back into them. And that's why this is so important for the institutions to acknowledge what they did. It's called institutional courage, because we need to go back out to those children and to the parents and say, it's not you, it was us, we failed, and get you mental health services in to treat our failure, our trauma that we caused in you and your children, and help you get your lives semi back on track. So with that, I'm headed off to my Christmas celebration. So good luck to everybody out there, and then we'll check in tomorrow and see how things are progressing. So take care, everybody. Bye bye.